Alright, a quick video for Saturday. I took the parts out of the Light and EDTA bath for de-rusting and paint removal, and these all came out really nice. I washed them with Dawn and then rinsed them with 91% alcohol, dried them with paper towel, and now they're just sitting here drying. So if they were going to form surface rust, they already would have started. So we should be in good shape with those. And then out here, I have the springs, but I don't know if they powder coated. I don't think they had powder coat back in the 70s, and it seems unlikely that Jaguar would have done something that advanced and expensive. But this paint does not want to come off. So what I'll do tomorrow is I'll find a way to hold them down, and then use a wire wheel. I had a long extension for the drill, a 1/4 inch shaft with Allen screws as grub screws in the end to hold the fitting in, or the wire brush in this case. And so I'll run them down the middle to get them clean and get the paint off, because you see, like there, the paint's come off. It's flash rusted, but that's not a surprise because I didn't alcohol it. But there you can see the paint that it's kind of wrinkled up and stuff, but just, you know, doesn't flow off. So we'll hit it with the wire brush, and that should get them cleaned up. I'm going to paint those instead of silver like the brakes. I'm going to paint them the cast iron gray that I did these ends on. The shocks, I think the original shocks were blue, but it's hard to tell because they were kind of all goobered up. But at least this way, you know, one of the cool things about the suspension, it's got four shocks in the rear end. So that'll make it so if you look underneath it, you'll be able to see that. And then in installing all of this stuff, you have to use dummy shafts. I think that's what they call it. But basically, after you get the bearings in here, the needle bearings in here, you put the race, the inner race in, and then you've got this, and then there's one of these square rubber O-rings that goes in between those two, and then this, and you do that on both sides, where the inner one matches up to that hole. So there's just a shitload of little moving parts, and you put these dummy shafts in to kind of hold everything more or less in alignment, so then you can drive that shaft through after you've offered it up to match that. So I went to Home Depot, and they had, this is 5/8, they had 5/8 inch wooden dowels, which was superb. Unfortunately, they wouldn't actually go inside these, so they were bigger than 5/8. So I ended up getting a 1/2 inch one. I did test one of these, the inside diameter, on a 5/8 inch bolt, which I could have gotten one of those, but the smooth part of the bolt, the shoulder, you know, tended to only be like this long. So I'd had to do a shitload of cutting to make that work. Those might work too. I'll have to measure those. They might be too thin. So we'll maybe look at doing that tomorrow too. I got wire to wire up those nuts, and the big slow thing's going to be getting those things cleaned up so that I can paint them. But that'll be for tomorrow. I've been scrubbing them in the sink with hot water. So I am done. Safety wire, 1 hour per side. Alright, I got those tubes that go across in. They've been in the freezer for like a week. Paint came up some here, so once these warm back up, I'll get the Alright, I removed the paint from those surfaces since that's where the seal that goes between those two washers rubs against. I sanded it with the 800 disc over there, the green one, and then I hit it with the metal conditioning pad, which I think is just a Scotch-Brite. Got them all shiny, and I kind of worked around it so that the texture worked in a circle, the same direction that the seals will spin. Well, not really spin, they just go back and forth, but you get it. All right, I had marked the spacers on each side, and the brake is centered, so we're good there. So now I'll go ahead and do the other side, and I expect we'll be in the same place. Oh, by the way, people have long wondered if there were elves. And I believe that there are two bits of information that prove the existence of elves, at least in England. And that is, you know, it's generally accepted that the Socialist, the Labour Party in England colluded with the unions and destroyed the native British auto industry. And so now there's only two car companies in England, Morgan and McLaren, and you know, combined they build as many cars as Toyota builds Camrys in about 3 minutes. But I believe that the unions were actually protesting the use of elves by Jaguar, and I'm sure the others, because see that bolt in there that holds the brake on? So it gets wired. It's really a pain in the ass to get to, and so you can only turn it like 1/8 of a turn each turn. There's not enough room to get a ratcheting wrench in there, and so it has to be done by magic. Plus, to adjust this, you may have to take these on and off several times. So I don't know. It seems to me that that's got to prove the existence of elves. I'm gonna get the calipers in there just to make sure that they looks quite centered. So I think we're in good shape, and I'll do the other one. All right. I got the wire on the brake lines, or the brake calipers. That one is nice and centered too. And tighten up the bridges. And I think that is going to be it for today. It's been out here all afternoon. Ah shit, this thing's upside down. Yep. So where are we? You don't do these until you put the cage on, because the big studs, I guess axle, goes through the cage, and so we can't do that. I guess, you know, I could go ahead and press in the bearings. Yeah, you're fine. Do that all at one shot. let's see, I think next on the docket will be to completely disassemble the emergency brakes. They got the new parts in with the little spring and those bolts that were bent and new pads. So those should be ready to put back together. I'm not sure I'm going to paint them because the plating on them is still good. And so what I may do is just wipe them down with the shark hide and call them good. But I do, there's a, let's see, let me stop this. Inside there, not inside, inside is, I believe it's in this area, is a self-adjuster thingy, which I would guess, given the state of the pads on the broken side, is probably not, is probably over adjusted. So we need to back him out. So we'll grease him up and all that kind of stuff all in one shot. Because I think that we really want to have the emergency brakes all mounted on there before we do the cage. Another thing, I think I showed you, I ran the dye on all of these so they're all nice and clean and easy turning. And I looked, and I don't think stage 8 makes nuts that would work there. So what I will do is just go by Austin Bolt, and they should have some of the ones, the metal ones that are squeezed or whatever, that will not back off, even when heated from brakes. So anyway, there we are. I'm done. Oh, just one thing. Doesn't it seem ashamed to put something that pretty up underneath the car? It looks good. Rather pleased with that. I did the same thing with the RX-7. The engine's all red and charcoal and has the Mazda rotary logos and all kind of stuff highlighted, and you can't see it. And the Blazes MR2, the engine was metallic orange, the block, but you know, buried there in the mid-engine part of that car, you couldn't see it. So this will be the same. So I'm consistent. I make pretty stuff that no one will ever see.